I am sitting in an intersection that is about to flip over. The African American community are coming in droves and saying, let's talk about this. We want to welcome our sisters and brothers and transgender sisters and brothers into the community, into the church.
This is Faith Complex, a dialogue about the entanglement of religion, politics and art, hosted by Professor Jacques Berliner-Blau of Georgetown University.
Hello, my name is Jacques Berliner-Blau of Georgetown University, and you've just clicked into Faith Complex. Joining us today is Ms. Donna Payne, Associate Director of Diversity for the Human Rights Campaign, located right here in Washington, D.C. Ms. Payne, welcome to Faith Complex.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
I guess maybe there's some people that don't know about all the good work that the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, does. Can you tell us a little bit about your mission and your agenda?
Yes, we are a huge LGBT organization working for federal advocacy on the rights of gays, lesbians, bisexual, and transgender community. Specifically, fighting for fair-minded candidates in Congress.
What's really interesting about your group is you stand at this very fascinating intersection. So here's what's at the intersection, I think. Tell me if I'm correct. The African American community, the LGBT community, and something we refer to as religion. That's a very crowded intersection, isn't it?
That's a crash.
How do you navigate that one?
Well, you drive softly and safely. But the first thing that happens is that you have to be able to stand up for who you are and be visible. And one of the problems in the African American LGBT community is that we don't have enough visibility.
Why is that? Let's get into that. Are the taproots of the homophobia we find in the African American community uniquely religious? Does it come from religious traditions?
Oh yes, the Christian tradition, and specifically the books in the Bible that say that you are not to, a man is not to lay with another man.
But then, what about King David and Jonathan?
That's pretty good. And when you get into the New Testament and you begin to talk about what Jesus said, you don't find that in the Bible, the pieces of hate towards someone being with a specific gender. However, if you get caught up on Leviticus and you're still there, then you can't get anywhere.
Yeah, a lot of people have been caught up on Leviticus across the past couple of millennia.
Everywhere. But in the African American tradition, which is very conservative, they are caught up in that place, and so they are holding close to their Bibles. We are culturally based in our religion. And the networks, the social networks that come from there are humongous. They reach out throughout our family. Our entire world is the church, or becomes the church.
And at what point in your life did it hit you that the lesbian identity had many enemies in this country and the African American identity had many enemies in this country? And you went and got both. When did it hit you?
I went and got both in college.
In college.
At 20 years old, I realized that I was a lesbian. And then my first thought was, oh my God, how am I going to explain this to my family? And I bowed out. For 8 years, I bowed out.
Of your family?
Meaning that I lived a double life. So I didn't say anything to my family about who I was, and I was having a life with having girlfriends, but I had on the side, gay man that was a friend, and they thought it was a boyfriend. And after I played that out for a while, I realized that this was never going to work. He had offered marriage and said that both of us could have a home and have two sides, so he could see his man and I could see my woman.
This would be the 80s, I guess.
This would be the 80s.
Right.
And a lot of people in the African American community was doing that. Being a preacher's kid, living in a religious culture, I knew I would lose my entire family and my social network.
And that, in fact, happened?
And that happened. I lost contact with my mother for 3 months, and family members were disappointed. I was called a black sheep of the family. And then when finally my mother and I talked for the first time after 3 months, she said she was ready to deal, and she wanted to come up to Washington and see my life. And we went from there. And the first place we went was Metropolitan Community Church.
Is that your church?
Yes, that's my church.
And what'd you think?
She had a great time, and the guys thought that her outfit was the bomb, and she was really okay after that.
And are you seeing more and more of these types of stories in your church?
Yes. A lot of people come to the church, and they are trying to connect their identity and their sexual orientation and be happy with that. And once they go through the phase of learning the scriptures and understanding that they're loved by God, then they're able to let go.
Well, all right, here's another question, kind of a difficult question. Is there, in fact, rampant homophobia in the African American community, or is it, again, an issue that might be hyped by folks that are not members of the community? What's your take and your group's take?
It is not as rampant as we think. People are thinking that it is. Now, do we have issues in the African American community? Oh, yes. And we're trying to have dialogues right now. We've also turned a corner here. So I am sitting in an intersection that is about to flip over. The African American community are coming in droves and saying, let's talk about this. We want to welcome our sisters and brothers and transgender sisters and brothers into the community, into the church.
And you're hearing this dialogue develop within churches in the African American community?
Oh, yes.
Can you name me some denominations that are particularly friendly or congenial to this view?
It's not going to be a denomination move swiftly on that. It's church by church, and that's the particular part of the African American community that you have to look at. The bishops aren't ready to talk about that. So the AME church, the CME church, the Black Baptist Convention, they're not ready to talk about that. Some of their ministers are. And they're the ones that are talking and connecting with each other.
All right. Now we're at Georgetown University, and we are going to deputize you as Professor Payne.
Thank you.
We will hood and robe you. And Professor Payne, we're going to ask you to grade the Obama administration on a variety of issues that are of interest to the LGBT community. So I am known as a very tough grader. I just want you to know.
Oh, okay. All right.
Merciless. So just so you know. All right. Let's start this way. Gays in the military. What's the grade and why?
Oh, that would be a C minus.
C minus. You are tough. Tell us why.
I'm tough. The president is taking his time, and there's no timeline on it.
Okay.
So walking slow is
too slow, huh?
Too slow.
Too slow. Hate crime legislation.
That would be a B minus.
B minus. Okay.
B minus because we thought that it should have been passed or would have passed earlier. However, is now in the Senate, and they're talking, now about bringing it up pretty soon. And we've noticed that we've run into plugs of some of the people in the Senate that, are pushing back.
Gotcha. HIV/AIDS policy.
Oh, I would definitely give him an A.
A. Tell us why.
Because the funding is still there. And he's speaking up. One of the things that the president did that was really profound is that he took the AIDS test a long time ago. And he explained in the African American community why this was so important. That was huge because we don't have a lot of leaders doing that in front of you.
And finally, same-sex marriage.
Oh, that's an F.
That's an F.
Yeah.
You flunked him on that one.
Yeah.
Tell us why.
We understand the president's stance, and he is speaking of civil unions and letting the states handle it. However, we know that if you had a president that would be positive about having same-sex marriage, then the conversation would definitely move forward.
Is there a disconnect between his banter on the campaign trail and what he's done since arriving in office?
Yeah, he's walking slow.
He's walking slow.
Yes.
Right. Are you hopeful about the next 3 years? Or
Oh, I am.
You're hopeful?
I am, yes. Okay. Because being African American and a lesbian, I see the way that the president will have to handle his presidency right now.
Now, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. We kind of just want to know a little bit more about you. Where did you grow up? Tell us about your family. Tell us about your life. Tell us what we'd all love to know, the good details.
Okay, the good details. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, in the Whitehaven area, right down the street from where Elvis Presley lived. with all that history, also I saw the bad things. My mother was a civil rights activist, and she was a teacher, but she was doing civil rights activism on the side. And my mother had me there on the night before Dr. King was murdered, and I got to hear him. It was phenomenal, and I still remember
How old were you?
his voice. I was 5.
You were 5 years old?
But I also remember the pain of when he was murdered. My mother, being the activist that she was, she went down there to the hotel. So I was in the midst of that chaos
Oh, my.
and the burning.
Oh, my.
I knew that there had been a huge change in the world.
Before we close, what's one scripture that you always repeat to yourself on a daily basis as you remind yourself that you are loved by God and gay people are loved by God?
I don't know the specific, but I'll paraphrase it for you. There may be weeping during the night, but joy cometh in the morning.
Donna Payne, thank you so much for coming to Faith Complex.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.